The Varnak didn't understand fear. Their race, born of logic and cold calculation, had never faced extinction or felt the sting of emotion that choked reason. For over 5 centuries, they'd ruled 3-star sectors and enslaved 12 species. Empires rose and fell under their boots without resistance, until humanity arrived. It started with the incident at Karos Station. A Varnak patrol ship detected a rogue vessel near the edges of the Otho Belt, a restricted trade zone they governed with ruthless efficiency. The ship didn't respond to standard hails, didn't broadcast any galactic identification code, and most damning of all, it was completely silent on the data grid. No species dared fly without transponders. It was considered an act of war. Standard protocol was clear. Scan the vessel, assess its threat level, board if necessary. The Varnak ship, the Kutrazin, locked on and fired a high-penetration scan toward the unknown ship, assuming it to be some smuggler's rust bucket. Then everything went black. The Kutrazin vanished, not disabled, not destroyed, vanished, no escape pods, no debris, no energy signatures. One moment it was there, mid-scan. The next, space was empty, silent and cold as death. Panic rippled through the Varnak High Command. They dispatched a second ship, the Naros Prime, equipped with long-range sensors and a cloaked escort. The mysterious vessel was still there. It hadn't moved an inch. High Command demanded a deeper analysis. The Naros Prime began a low-frequency passive scan. No active probing this time. It wasn't worth the risk. The scan revealed something the Varnak had never seen. The ship wasn't broadcasting because it didn't need to. It was unmistakably human. And not just human. Military. The hull was covered in black metal plates that seemed to shimmer like oil. No ports, no insignia, no windows. Just a single white mark burned into the side like a scar. A small, nearly invisible circle with 2 vertical lines through it. An ancient Terran symbol that no Varnak translator could decode. The humans called it the Watcher. A whisper began spreading through the outer rim. "Don't scan the Watcher." The Varnak tried to squash the rumors, but fear travels faster than light. Word spread of the Kutrazin's fate. Civilian traders rerouted entire fleets to avoid the Otho Belt. Pirates abandoned their hideouts. Even the ruthless Enkari hive, known for harvesting enemy ships mid-flight, refused to approach the area. The Watcher stayed silent, unmoving, like a sleeping god with one eye cracked open. But the question burned in the minds of every commander in the Varnak fleet. Why can't we scan a human warship? What's inside that makes it so dangerous? Theories varied. Some said it held a quantum weapon powered by a black hole core, something that could erase time itself. Others claimed it wasn't a ship at all, but a living organism engineered in secret by Earth's deep science labs. But the most terrifying theory, the one shared only behind locked doors, was that the ship could see you the moment you tried to see it. One brave, or perhaps foolish, admiral, Varnak Kasari Thol, dismissed the fear as myth. He ordered a direct scan from orbit using an ultra-wide band pulse meant to penetrate reinforced dreadnought armor. The moment the scan touched the Watcher, every screen aboard Thol's flagship went dark. The bridge filled with a humming sound, like a chorus of voices speaking in languages that didn't belong in this universe. The crew began bleeding from their ears. Some gouged out their own eyes to stop the visions. Others fell to the floor, whispering, "It sees us." Only Admiral Thol remained standing, his mind untouched but paralyzed by a single sentence that burned into every monitor aboard his ship. "You are not cleared to observe classified human technology. This incursion has been logged. Earth remembers." Thol ordered an immediate retreat. From that day on, No alien race dared scan a human warship again. They didn't know what was inside. They only knew that looking was a mistake you didn't live long enough to regret. They called an emergency summit on Varnak Prime, deep beneath the obsidian towers of the High Council Citadel. The meeting chamber, usually filled with arrogance and quiet contempt for lesser species, now echoed with an uneasy silence. The seats of the outer colony's governors were empty. Many had refused to send representatives. Fear, an alien concept to the Varnak until recently, now moved through them like a virus. Admiral Thol sat at the center of the room, rigid, pale gray eyes sunken and twitching slightly. He hadn't slept since the incident. Varnak biology didn't even require much sleep, but whatever he'd seen, or whatever had seen him, had changed something fundamental in him. "I told you," Thol whispered, breaking the silence. It looked back. Supreme Strategist Ulrox narrowed his eyes. "You mean to tell us a ship saw you?" "No," Thol said, his voice dry like paper. "Not the ship. Something inside it, something awake, not mechanical, not artificial, alive and aware." Ulrox scoffed. "Fairy tales. I've ruled 12 planetary systems and broken entire empires. You expect me to believe humans have created something that watches from inside a dead hull?" "Then scan it yourself," Thol snapped. "Be my guest. See how long your empire lasts." They didn't scan it again. Instead, they monitored it. 3 weeks passed. The Watcher didn't move. Not once. It floated above the Otho belt like it was nailed to space itself. Its energy signature never changed. No life signs. No signal traffic. The Varnak sent stealth drones closer. But every time, the drones glitched out, spiraled into madness, or simply disappeared. Then, on the 23rd day, it moved. Just slightly. Barely a shift. It turned, slowly, but it wasn't moving toward any object of interest or drifting casually through gravity flux. It was pointing itself toward Varnak Prime. That alone nearly caused a planetary evacuation. The entire fleet was ordered to high alert. Orbital defense grids were activated. Civilian transports were grounded. Children were sent into sub-atmospheric shelters, usually reserved for nuclear events. For the first time in centuries, the Varnak were preparing for war on their own soil. But Earth didn't send a message. They didn't declare intent. They didn't need to. The threat was the silence. That night, Varnak citizens across multiple time zones reported identical nightmares, black ships in the sky, whispering voices calling them by name, and a human eye staring down from the stars. The priests of the ancient neural temples declared a psychic incursion, something not seen since the Time Wars, long before humanity had reached the stars. Still, Ulrox insisted on answers. He ordered one last attempt at contact. No scan, no aggression, just a data packet of peaceful inquiry. It was short, diplomatic. A simple message. "This is Varnak High Command. State your intent." The reply came instantly. No time delay, no encryption, no transmission lag. Just 6 words. "Your species has been documented. Stand down." Ulrox fell into silence after that. Something about those 6 words felt worse than a threat. It sounded like judgment, like the final entry in a long report. The Varnak government classified the message immediately and banned all traffic near the Otho belt. But whispers kept spreading. Because the Watcher didn't stop there. A week later, it vanished from the belt. 3 days after that, a rogue Enkari harvest ship was found drifting near the Dravos moon, its hull ruptured not by weapons, but from the inside. The crew had left a single transmission before going silent. It found us. The Watcher had moved again, but not by propulsion. It never left engine trails, never flared against grav fields. It simply appeared. wherever it wanted, whenever it chose. Human warships, once thought to be crude relics of Terran paranoia, were now the most terrifying unknowns in galactic history. Entire alien academies began rewriting their warfare doctrine around a single terrible idea: never see what you cannot understand. And at the center of it all floated that black ghost, unreachable, untouchable, unkillable. And worst of all, watching. The Atral Dominion had always considered itself the intellectual backbone of the galaxy, composed of crystalline, hive-mind entities who lived on floating megastructures powered by star cores. They believed knowledge, pure, untainted logic, was the highest pursuit in existence. Unlike the Varnak, they didn't conquer with weapons. They didn't destroy. They absorbed. They studied. They learned. So when the Watcher was reported again, this time in the neutral zones orbiting the rogue planet Chirin 9, the Atral were the first to react. The Dominion Council sent their most advanced observational rig, Telestis Vi, to examine the anomaly. It wasn't military. It didn't carry weapons. It couldn't even fire back. But it could scan anything, living or dead, quantum or spiritual, down to the molecular vibrations of time itself. Its knowledge reservoir was so vast that some claimed it could recreate entire species from dust. The Atral were not afraid. They were curious. Their arrogance would be their undoing. Celestis Vi approached cautiously, keeping a safe orbital distance. The Watcher was again inert, floating above Chirin 9 with that same haunting stillness. No light, no activity, just its shadow on the stars, and that ancient Terran symbol burned into its side like a curse. The rig initiated a multi-phase scan, not aggressive, just informational. 10 seconds in, the feedback loop began. Celestis Vi's quantum memory lattice began to melt, literally, like ice under solar fire. The scanning beams bounced back, distorted and corrupted, carrying with them fragments of something that shouldn't exist: data with mass. The Atral had no word for what they received. The rig's processing hive screamed. Not metaphorically, it screamed. Through subspace, through every communication channel, in every language the Dominion had ever catalogued, a single, unified scream. We were seen! And then silence. Total, perfect silence. Celestis Vi was gone. No explosion, no debris, not even background radiation, a hole in space where the ship had once existed, like someone had erased it from reality, cell by cell, atom by atom. The Dominion didn't send another ship. Instead, they did what no one thought the Atral were capable of doing. They sealed their knowledge archives. Every file, every reference, every note on humans, locked down under emergency protocol. They declared humanity an observational paradox, a category that didn't exist until the Watcher forced them to create it. Meanwhile, Earth said nothing. Not a single diplomat, no ambassador, no apology, no threat. But all across the stars, whenever a Watcher-class warship appeared, and there were more now, some whispered, something always followed: malfunctions, hallucinations, ships drifting into dead space, crews vanishing, empires trembling, and the phrase, those 6 words, kept appearing in different places, on derelict ships, on hacked broadcast beacons, even whispered from AI units that had never interfaced with Terran tech. Your species has been documented. Stand down. It was no longer a warning. It was a sentence. The galactic community began to shift. Treaties were rewritten, flight paths adjusted. A 5-sector radius around any Watcher-class sighting was immediately marked red, dead space. Military fleets rerouted entire wars to avoid them. And in the background, on the dark side of the moon orbiting Earth, the real Watchers waited. Quiet, patient. Watching everyone who had ever dared raise a scan against a human vessel. Inside those ships were not just weapons. They were libraries, files, faces, names, entire civilizations archived in silence. The message was clear. If you see us, we already saw you. If you scan us, we already knew you would. And if you threaten us, you were already too late. Aboard the Vigilant Silence, one of Earth's oldest and most mysterious Watcher-class vessels, silence wasn't just protocol, it was doctrine. The crew didn't speak unless necessary. Even then, their words were clipped, coded, and cold. Every gesture, every nod, every action had meaning honed through decades of operation. They weren't soldiers. They weren't even spies. They were archivists. Captain Lyra Mendez sat in the command chair, eyes locked on the infinite black beyond the reinforced obsidian glass. She hadn't blinked in 2 minutes. Her face, once soft and brown with youth, now bore a hardness that only deep space exposure could carve into someone. She hadn't aged badly, just completely. "Target system reached," came the only voice on the bridge, Chief Interface Officer Day. Varnak outpost detected. Cloak intact. External scans confirmed Lyra didn't nod. She just whispered. "Open the lens." From the bridge ceiling, a silent mechanism began to hum. Not mechanically, but organically, like a pulse. A black orb descended, covered in thin, rune-like circuits that shifted as though alive. They called it the lens, but it wasn't glass. It wasn't metal. Some said it wasn't even human-made. The lens was Earth's true weapon, not a gun, not a missile, not a fleet-destroying cannon. It was memory. As the orb activated, a wave of invisible energy rippled from the ship. Untraceable, undetectable, undeniable. On the Varnak outpost miles below, hardened with underground bunkers, sensory dampeners, and advanced neural jammers, things began to unravel. Screens flickered, voices stuttered. Soldiers stared into space as childhood traumas, hidden sins, and the faces of long-dead lovers began to replay in their minds. Memory breaches. The Watcher wasn't scanning for information. It was reminding. "Memory anchors confirmed," Day murmured. "Outpost mines exposed. Full vulnerability. Ready for archival." Captain Lyra gave the order. "Commence the pull." Below, the Varnak officers fell to their knees. They screamed. Some clawed their own faces, others tried to fire weapons that had already been shut down by their own nervous systems. The Watcher didn't kill. It didn't torture. It simply showed them who they were. Everything they'd hidden, buried, forgotten. It brought it back. This was how humans fought now, with truth. Weaponized, surgical, merciless truth. And they didn't aim it at fleets or worlds. They aimed it at the mind. Inside the Vigilant Silence, the lens pulsed one final time, then retracted. The bridge went still. Day looked at Lyra. "Total extraction complete. 213 mines cataloged. Varnak command memory compromised. Suggest planetary blackout." Lyra stood, her voice devoid of emotion. "Erase their tech, not their lives. Let them remember this. And if they retaliate—" "They won't," she said quietly. "They can't." Outside the ship, the stars blinked in and out of focus as if space itself feared the vessel. Because this wasn't about war anymore. This was about control through knowledge. The humans had learned long ago that brute force only led to escalation. Alliances, rebellions, the chaos of resistance. But fear of knowing, of being known, was a much more permanent deterrent, especially when no one understood how it worked. Some whispered that the lens was built using recovered alien tech, something older than time. Others believed it was a living entity bonded to the ship's AI. And a few, those who'd seen it up close, were convinced it wasn't tech at all. It was consciousness made solid. Whatever it was, wherever it came from, One thing was undeniable. Humanity had changed. No more declarations of war, no more fleets marching to foreign systems. Now they simply arrived, scanned nothing, broadcast nothing, just floated and watched. And the galaxy reacted exactly the way humans intended. They did everything they could to avoid being watched. The Syndic cartel had ruled the shadows of the galaxy for over a century, smuggling black market tech, trafficking neural enhancement drugs, selling classified weapon mods to whichever empire had the credits. Untouchable, untraceable, unbothered. Their ships flew under stealth composites mined from asteroid gods. Their captains were half AI, half monster. They bribed Varnak admirals and burned Atral biodrones for fun. No system, no alliance, no race had ever made them flinch. Until a simple whisper crawled across their encrypted comm channels like a disease. The Watcher is near. Most thought it a hoax, a scare tactic, maybe a rival syndicate's prank. Then one of their transport ships, a heavily cloaked juggernaut named the Jade Fang, went dark over Eros Field. No distress signal, no signs of pursuit. 1 second it was there, preparing to offload stolen Earth weaponry to a Shiran client. The next? Silence. No wreckage, no trails, only a chilling anomaly in the ship's data logs before transmission ceased. Error 500, you are not authorized to scan this vessel. The cartel moved quickly. They weren't fools. They ordered all units to avoid the Eros sector. That should have been the end of it. But the Watcher wasn't at Eros anymore. It was already above Rika Prime, the Syndic's secret command moon. And this time, it didn't stay silent. The cartel's top warlord, Cora Vance, stood on the deck of her personal cruiser, watching the black dot grow in her orbital scopes. She was no stranger to danger. Her spine was laced with sharpened iron, and her voice could shatter most AIs into compliance. But as she stared at the unmarked human warship above her stronghold, a feeling crept up her back that she hadn't felt since childhood. Helplessness. "Why isn't it transmitting?" she growled. "Nothing on any band," her comm officer replied, sweating. "Not even passive pings. It's just looking." Cora's jaw tightened. Well, maybe it's time we look back. Against every warning drilled into galactic memory, she ordered a full system scan. 3 seconds later, every screen on the bridge went black. Not dark, black, like light itself had been consumed. Reflections vanished. Ship lights failed to bounce off surfaces. Sound was deadened like they'd been submerged in an invisible ocean. Then, one by one, the crew began to mutter. Their own names, their parents' names, their birth memories, words they hadn't spoken in decades. Some fell to their knees, crying. Others tore off their comm implants, screaming about faces that weren't supposed to be alive anymore. But Cora remained standing, trembling, watching the main screen slowly pulse back to life, with one sentence. "You have been seen. Earth remembers what you stole." That was when she knew. The weapons deal. The stolen Earth tech. The black core fragment the Syndic sold to the Enkari 5 years ago. Earth hadn't forgotten. She had thought Earth was like every other bloated empire. Too big to care, too slow to react. But Earth didn't react. Earth recorded. And when the time came, they didn't send an army. They sent a shadow that stared. Cora Vance, killer of kings, breaker of systems, collapsed into her command chair and whispered to herself, "We were wrong to ever touch them." The Watcher turned in silence and disappeared. No shots fired, no retaliation, just a message. But that message was now burned into every databank the Syndic controlled. And worse, into the minds of every person on board Rika Prime. They dreamed of eyes. They heard whispering metal. They felt time skip, reverse, and fold in on itself. Because when a watcher scans you, it doesn't just see your ship, it sees you. And once you've been seen, there's no hiding again. 3 months passed. 3 months of silence. Not a single watcher sighting. No data anomalies. No ship vanishings. No psychic backlash. It was as if the black warships had blinked out of existence, gone like shadows at sunrise. And that, more than anything, terrified the galaxy. Because the thing about silence, when it comes from Earth, it isn't peace. It's the inhale before the strike. Across the neutral zones, alien empires clung to unease like oxygen. The Varnak doubled their orbital shields. The Atral closed their knowledge-sharing treaties. The Syndic cartel dissolved their public channels and buried themselves in asteroid crypts. But no one knew the truth. Earth wasn't gone. Earth was watching. From orbit around Saturn's dead twin, deep within the carved-out shell of Mimas, sat the command center for the Watcher Initiative, Station W0, known only as Echo Route. There, beneath miles of layered encryption, human archivists reviewed the data pulled from every Watcher-class operation, every intercepted thought, every collapsed psyche, every whisper of betrayal, corruption, theft, or ambition, recorded, sorted, and silently judged. Because the Watchers weren't just deterrents, they were filters, and Echo Route wasn't content with observation anymore. Commander Arlen Hayes, a veteran of Earth's forgotten war with the Creel, stood in the center of the vault chamber. Around him floated thousands of suspended memory cores, each one glowing faintly with bioelectric residue from alien minds. Minds cracked open and sifted through by the lens, thoughts plucked like notes from an instrument. "Status on core batch 117-X?" he asked, not looking at anyone. A young analyst, eyes dim, voice robotic, answered from behind the vault. Batch confirmed Varnak psychological manipulation. 17 planetary leaders influenced by neural subliminals. Subversive activity logged. Action? Ready for spectral protocol. Hayes nodded once. Begin the bleed. Somewhere across the galaxy, 17 Varnak governors would wake up the next morning with vivid nightmares of their own assassinations. They'd distrust their closest allies, turn on each other. Their ranks would crumble not from war, but from the seeds of fear planted in dreams. Earth didn't need bullets anymore. They had precision memory warfare. Back aboard the Vigilant Silence, Captain Lyra Mendez received a new course. Deep space, unknown sector, one marked in human military code simply as Scar Point. Origin? She asked. Day responded after a pause. Unmapped system. No prior records, but... He hesitated. We've received reports of a vessel. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Another watcher? Day shook his head. Number something else. Someone's mimicking us. That changed everything. Within an hour, the Vigilant Silence had broken orbit, slipping into slipstream without a ripple. Faster than any other ship in the galaxy. Silent as a thought. Because for all their strength, the Watchers had one rule that could not be broken. They must remain unmatched. Imitation was unacceptable. Earth's control over fear, over myth, over presence, it depended on being unique. And someone, somewhere, had just tried to step into the darkness that only humans were supposed to own. As the ship vanished into the void, Captain Mendez tapped a small hidden panel on her command console. A soft blue light flickered. Contact Echo Route, she ordered quietly. Authorization Mendez 20. I need clearance for lens expansion. Day turned, visibly startled. Ma'am, that hasn't been approved for field deployment. It is now, she said. Her voice was calm, steady, absolute. Because if someone was trying to be the Watcher, Earth would make sure they never opened their eyes again. The journey to Scarpoint took less than an hour in linear time, but felt far longer in the quiet corridors of the vigilant silence. The ship did not hum or pulse like normal vessels. It moved like it didn't exist, slipping through folds in space the same way light bends around a black hole. Not even Day could track their path. Navigation was handled by the ship's will, an AI presence so old and so deeply classified that even Earth Command refused to call it artificial. They called it Echo. Captain Lyra Mendez stood in front of the lens chamber, armored in her usual shadow-gray suit, the Terran badge stitched over her heart, a black circle and twin lines, unreadable to outsiders. Day approached, hesitation on his face, holding a fresh data feed. "We're nearing Scarpoint. The object, it's there." "Vessel?" "Vessel," he confirmed grimly. "Unregistered, no transponder, cloaked but not well. They tried to mimic our visual displacement field." Tried. Failed. Lyra tapped a button on the inner console, and Echo's voice, female, melodic, inhuman, filled the chamber. "Foreign energy detected. Structure approximates Watcher architecture. Material composition, 74% Terran mimic alloys, 26% unknown biometal." "Origin?" she asked. "Not human. Traces of Creel replication signatures, likely reverse-engineered from lost Earth tech." Lyra exhaled slowly. Her jaw tightened. The Creel had been wiped out 2 decades ago, or so everyone believed. "Show me," she said. The walls lit up, forming a ghostly image of the imposter ship. It looked right at first glance. Black metal skin, no windows, the curved body of a deep space predator. But the longer you stared, the more wrong it looked. It didn't move like a Watcher. It twitched. It jittered against the backdrop of stars. Its lines were imperfect, its stillness forced, like a creature trying to pretend it was dead while still breathing. And worst of all, it was scanning. Not passive scans. Active probing, bouncing off nearby systems, looking for targets. "They want to be seen," Day muttered, disturbed. "They want the galaxy to think they're us." Lyra's eyes hardened. "They're not." With a quiet gesture, she authorized full lens activation. The floor of the chamber opened. The real lens rose like a god's eye, its living circuits glowing with deep blue light. Around the ship, space itself shimmered with tension, as if the void was holding its breath. "Echo," Lyra said softly. "Prepare counter-mimicry protocol." Echo's voice shifted, colder, ancient. "Protocol unlocked. Confirming target. Unauthorized replication. Shall I burn the name?" "Yes." Because Earth didn't kill with bullets anymore. They burned names. Across the stars, your name was your passport, your protection, your power. The Watchers didn't just erase you from existence, they erased you from memory. You became untethered, forgotten, a shadow without history. Lyra gave the command. The lens pulsed. On the fake Watcher, lights flickered, systems scrambled, its outer hull warped like wax under heat. The ship began to shudder. No explosions, no alarms, just pure collapse. As if the universe itself had decided this thing should not exist. Inside, whatever crew had tried to mimic Earth's design began to forget themselves. They screamed, not from pain, but from confusion. "Who are we? Why are we here? What is our name?" And in the vacuum of Scarpoint, the false god shattered. No debris, no survivors, just particles too small to measure and too dangerous to remember. Dai stared at the screen in silence. "You think that was the last one?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. "Someone helped them," she finally said. "No way they built that on their own. Someone gave them the specs. The idea, another race?" Maybe. Maybe even one of ours. Day swallowed. Then what now? Lyra looked into the lens, still glowing, still alive, still watching. We keep watching. We keep remembering. And when the next one dares to wear our skin... She touched the symbol on her chest. We remind them why no one scans a human warship. The galaxy never officially acknowledged the incident at Scarpoint. No announcement, no alert, no mourning, because to mourn something, you had to remember it. And after the vigilant silence erased the imposter, no one did. The Creel ship, its design, its false Watcher hull, vanished not just from space, but from data itself. Ships that had tracked its approach had corrupted logs. Memory cores that held its coordinates were unreadable. Even spoken references broke down mid-sentence, as if the minds trying to recall it were betraying themselves. Echo Root had succeeded. Earth's control over fear by memory was absolute. And yet, Captain Lyra Mendez couldn't sleep. She stood alone in her quarters, lights dimmed, the stars outside unmoving. The ship's hum, a faint heartbeat-like rhythm, was usually a comfort. But tonight it felt louder, heavier, because even though Scarpoint was quiet now, something felt unfinished. Echo's voice broke the silence without warning. "Captain, priority transmission from Echo Root, Level 9. Her stomach tightened. Level 9 meant unfiltered, meant danger. "Route it." A holographic face shimmered to life in her chamber, a face she hadn't seen in 15 years. Director Sahir Kyle. He looked older, thinner. The years hadn't been kind to him, but his voice still held the iron calm of a man who once ordered orbital strikes without blinking. "Captain Mendez," he said, "we've had an event. One of our ground vaults was breached." Her jaw tightened. "Which vault?" "Vault Theta." Silence. Vault Theta wasn't a weapons depot. It wasn't a fleet station. It was worse. It was a data graveyard. "That's not possible," she said. "Theta's location is redacted from even high command." "Not anymore. Someone got in, and they didn't take anything." "What did they leave?" Director Kyle paused, then gestured. The hologram shifted. A still image appeared, etched into the wall of Vault Theta in material no one recognized. A message. 6 words. "We see the Watchers watching us." Lyra stared. Her mouth went dry. Kale's face darkened. "We don't know who. Not yet. Not how. But this isn't mimicry. This is reply. Someone is looking back." For the first time in her life, Lyra felt the edge of the fear they had spent decades instilling in others. Not panic, not dread, but the uncomfortable realization that the mirror wasn't one-sided. That the Watchers, for all their precision and secrecy, were not the only ones who remembered. She ended the call without a word and walked straight to the lens chamber. Day was already there, summoned by Echo. "What happened?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. She stood before the lens, watching it flicker faintly. Then Echo spoke. "Threat level unknown. Observation suggested. Projection. Escalation is no longer avoidable." Lyra turned to Day, her voice distant. "We were the shadows, the ghosts in the signal, but something else is learning how to haunt." "Do we strike first?" "No," she said. "We go dark." Day blinked. "Dark?" "All of it. No transmissions, no movement, every Watcher. Silence until further notice." "That's protocol for when humanity is at risk of exposure. You think this qualifies?" "I think we're no longer the only ones writing history," she said quietly. "And if someone else can carve messages into our bones..." She trailed off. Day stepped back. "And the lens?" She placed her palm gently on the orb, letting it pulse against her skin. Let it sleep. Because silence was their greatest weapon. But silence, when broken by something else, something just as quiet, was now their greatest threat. As the vigilant silence powered down, fading from sensors across 1,000 systems, and as echo route sealed every channel deeper than quantum thread, the stars blinked and shifted, almost as if something else was now staring back. Not human, not alien, something new. The galaxy, long shaped by Earth's cold gaze, would soon realize even the Watchers can be watched. And for the first time in nearly a century, Earth didn't know who was coming.